Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I did a review. I don't say a review because I don't do reviews. I crap on stuff, and or sometimes I say, "Hey, this movie's great" or "TV show's great," but then I don't talk about it because people need to have their own experience. But if I talk about something, I talk about this whole movie. It's an atrocious movie on lots of levels, and there's well, let's watch a little bit of this because I want to make this a standalone video. At first, I was just going to add the voiceover, but it ends up being an hour long. And so now I feel like I should just make it a standalone video. And so I'm going to go through the scene by scene and what's wrong with it on just like a technical movie making, a viewer experience problematic movie. All the plot holes and the ridiculous storyline. A lot of it has to do with the fact that he wanted his daughter to play Taylor Swift-like character when Taylor Swift is hot right now with her concert crap and all that stuff, right? But let's watch a little of this, and I'll do the rest of the introduction here.
In Studio 1A, Josh Hartnett has graced our screens for more than 25 years in film.
So later on, when I, can't remember Josh Hartnett's name, it's Josh Hartnett.
Like The Virgin Suicides, Black Hawk Down, and most recently, Best Picture winner Oppenheimer.
That's right. Then M Night Shyamalan is an Academy Award-nominated director behind unforgettable thrillers like The Sixth Sense and Signs. And his daughter, Salika, is a singer-songwriter whose music has appeared in the Apple TV Plus series Servant.
There's a lot of
which is M. Night Shyamalan's TV show, right? That's on Apple.
On this couch.
Awful lot of talent on this couch.
Now they are together in Knight's new film. It's called Trap. Josh plays Cooper. Cooper's a dad who brings his daughter to a concert of a huge pop star.
M. Night Shyamalan loves to bathe his characters in red. Like that's something that worked in Sixth Sense, so he does it time and time again. He loves close-ups, which I'll get into, and some of these other things as I review the movie, right? And again, it's not a review. It's a condemnation of somebody who abuses their position as a storyteller because of their position as a storyteller, right? Where he, can get money and make movies. And so now he's just, people lose it as they, and their quality of what they do gets worse. And people say, well, they're just beyond, they're evolving. And this is clearly not evolving because this is a horrible movie. And a lot of it has to do with the framework of the movie that involves having, pushing his daughter out there as a pop star, right? Like that's the centerpiece of this contrived plot line.
The pop star played by Salika. But here's the thing. The whole concert, it's actually a trap to catch a killer.
It's a trap to catch a killer. Again, I cover all this. That guy's the guy that divulges all the secrets. This guy right here. So I talk about this later in the movie where he, a big hole opens up in the aisle where the stairs are, and a performer comes out of there. And Josh Hartnett, the serial killer, tries to get his daughter to go down in this pit, right? And she, tries to convince her. I'm not going to show you the whole thing here, but
it looks really cool.
What?
Wouldn't it be unbelievable to see what's down there? See how they put on the show? There might be costumes and things.
That's crazy. We can't go down there. You're acting strange.
Oh, he was. He was acting quite strange.
Yeah, I that's a very liberal and generous assessment of calling that acting.
Good morning to all of you.
Hi, guys.
And we're not giving away too much because in the trailer it's already revealed that you're a serial killer. You're at this concert.
Just casual.
Yeah,
You're a serial
and
killer.
he even did this.
You're a serial killer.
Serial killer.
And so you're at this concert, but you've taken your daughter to this concert.
Yeah.
I don't mention this in my critique of this video. What I want to talk about here is in their introduction is, like I said, how egregious it is to take advantage of your audience and your position. Because, you have some responsibility to have a reality-based story that has a point and has, something of value in it. And, you're making up something that's an illusion, a lie. Movies and these stories are illusionary, and they exist in an illusionary world that isn't, based in reality and the laws of physics and any of these other things, social constraints or any of these things. You're making something that's, imaginary. You're imagining something. But this is so contrived and so offensive to the, to the viewer. And, they always now try to put all this woke stuff, and they try to weave together these various elements of social movement and brainwashing, and it's just like I said, it's egregious. It's horrible. But what I forgot to mention in this, the narration that you're about to hear when I describe the movie is how they have glamorized serial killers. They've made serial killers heroes in TV series and movies. And in this case, this guy's trying to get out of a trap, and it's like you're kind of rooting for him. They make M Night Shyamalan gives his daughter a hero's role, and she plays a hero and she does heroic shit. So it's like, the you're caught between rooting for the obvious protagonist, the guys who is escaping a trap, right? This is a task movie. This is a quest. This guy has a quest to escape a trap, and oftentimes, the criminal is the hero, and the police who are trying to trap the criminal are the, the bad guys / NPCs, extras, who don't mean anything. And also the disregard for the audience and the disregard for the people who are not the main characters in a movie. All the expendable extras and NPCs that are in the movie. And all those things are really bad. Like, it's just a bad, it's bad psychologically, and it's bad societally to push these ideas out there.
What was it like playing a character with such a sinister secret?
Well, I learned that serial killers can be loving fathers, too. No, it was more just like, a lot of research into psychopathy generally. And there's a great book called The Psychopath Test that we read.
Yeah, there was, no research that was legitimate, the stuff that... This is a bad movie. It's completely unrealistic.
Together and getting a sense of, how prevalent that is in society. There's 10% of us apparently have sociopathic tendencies. And it was just, it was a chance to play something kind of outside of anything I've ever played before.
Yeah.
And Knight wanted it to be bold, so.
Knight did. Knight likes to be bold.
It was fun.
10%? Are you in the 10?
Why would I be in the 10?
Well, I don't know. You played
There
the part
are
well.
6 of us on this couch. None of us has to be one.
I don't know.
In this room.
Can we expect one of these traditional M. Night Shyamalan twists at the end?
I don't really think of it like that, but I'm...
I don't think you thought about this at all. Somebody should have talked you out of this thing. The people paying for it, or any number of people.
More structural things that are unique that you might find surprising, where the movie goes and what happens. As long as you're one-to-one with the character, which would be his character, and whatever he finds out that's very shocking, you're going to find.
Okay, so I talk about this later on. You saw it in the trailer, where he has this guy trapped in a basement here.
Yeah, I feel very shocked by it as well.
It's interesting because you're
They're there where he's bathed in red. That's the big thing. That's where the reveal that you realize, hey, this guy's a serial killer.
staging this movie you actually held a concert.
Yes.
In this huge arena, hundreds of extras. How do you direct a movie and a concert at this? It seemed logistically that'd be kind of crazy.
Yeah, a lot of times when you see movies and there's a concert, even if it's a well-known singer playing that,
not some director's daughter that he just that he's throwing up there because she's written a few songs and he wants to boost her career. It's like a real legitimate pop star.
Doesn't feel real for some reason. Something doesn't.
Almost kind of muted.
Yeah, something doesn't, because you can sense those costumes, the stage there wasn't love in it. There
was so much love. When you watch this movie, you're going to be like, there's so much love in that concert.
Really thought out. We put on a real concert.
I mean, the fact that he put on a real concert to make this piece of shit movie that's one of the most unrealistic, contrived, pathetic movies I've seen, and that's why I'm devoting a whole hour to shitting on it, right? he would use the word real here and authentic. It's not either of those things.
We spent, before we shot the movie, we worked on everything, the choreography, everything, every song, why, every movement, everything that was on stage, the colors, the lighting, everything. Obviously, Salika's songs, and we put on a real concert. So
They put on a real concert. You can see.
while Josh is performing, over his shoulder is a real concert, and so everyone in the arena was reacting to everything that was happening. So every morning we would come in and shoot the crowd reacting to her and everybody on stage, and they were really, really going for it.
What was
No,
that
they were
like
going for it, and she was going for it, and it failed because they didn't get it right. They didn't achieve it.
for you? I mean, I was reading you wrote, you produced all of the songs in the film. I know he probably gave you a lot of creative freedom, but what was that experience like? Because you're acting, but you also, I know, love performing.
Yeah. I mean, the music was, you know, like you said, it wasn't an afterthought to the movie. So it was sort of the first thing that we did before even starting shooting the movie. So as soon as he finished the script, I started writing the songs. And every song had to kind of be curated specifically for the scene and kind of have two functions. You know, I wanted the album, which will come out with the movie on August 2nd, to function like if you listen
Right, just let me plug my album here because, you know, it needs to be plugged.
to it as a pop album that, you know, holds its
You would
own.
enjoy it, right.
But also it has
It holds its own as a pop album. I mean, it does.
to score what's happening. And I, you know, you're with Josh's character, so it kind of had to follow what he's feeling. And
Okay, so you get the idea, but it's, you know, in terms of the introduction, like I get into all this stuff and I go through it scene by scene based on my memory of the thing that I watched it last night. And, you know, one of the reasons I want to make this into a full movie, like I said, is that the importance of the storyteller. You know, I'm telling a story here, like we all tell stories. And, you know, the stories that we tell make up people's internal worlds. And now our stories are movies and TV and now internet content, right? That's what, you know, people have stories. They used to sit around campfires and listen to stories and Aboriginal cultures and, you know, village-based cultures before there's any of these things. People would play music. There'd be someone play the fiddle or something or whatever, you know, traditional music that was. And people would get their morals and their, you know, kids would grow up listening to these stories, and these stories were there to teach them about, you know, thinking about, you know, morality, and their lessons, you know, fables and these things, the parables and whatever it was that would help them understand life. And, you know, this is a piece of shit movie that you guy is just, you know, this kind of thing that somebody who has success does, and it's, you know, this the nepotism and all the things that go into it. And it's like, it's just so poorly done, right? It's good because it's so poorly done. It's like easy to mock, and I was laughing and had fun at it, but it's just, you know, it's offensive, right? It's so unrealistic and so inauthentic and so bad it's offensive. All right, let's get into the rest of it here. So today's Sunday, November 17th. I'm going to wrap up this video here. And so I woke up, I had a really great meditation, and I had these thoughts, you know, I have these things that come through me. You know, in my understanding of quality content, anything that's just really good, and we're going to get into something that's really bad here in a second, a contrast to this, is channeled in some way, some shape or form, any of these ideas, and I've talked about this extensively. There's a great talk about this, TED Talk by Elizabeth, I don't know her last name, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she talks about all these things, you know, in terms of people tuning into or being connected to the flow of information. And, you know, that happens here with me, and I do my best to be a conduit. And oftentimes I have some framework and some ideas, and I give those ideas, you know, I start off with a talk, and then it just flows. And I can just tell it's great, and not great because I have anything to do with it, but because it's great, right? The information is profound in some way. Not because of me, but because, you know, what I do is, I mean, I add my little flavor to it, but really, mostly what I do is try to get out of the way of it and just let it flow, right? And so that's going to be about the evolution of our species, lies, about our origin of our species, the primal lies, and then all the things that go with it, right? And that's going to be the next video. And so I was going to put this talk, the reason I'm saying that is I was going to put this talk in that video, but the thing I did this morning is already an hour long, right? And my wife sent me a picture, which I thought was doctored, but it was a picture of RFK Jr., Donald Trump and his oldest son, and and Elon Musk's and Mike Johnson, the guy in charge of the House of Representatives, on Trump's plane going to a UFC event and eat McDonald's food, which I was like, that's going to be also at the start of my next video. After the evolutionary talk, I have to get into that, right? It's just completely effed up. And so in all that, I watched the movie, the Trap. And it's by far the worst movie in terms of plot holes. Certainly, M Night Shyamalan's worst movie. And I want to talk about it, when it was fresh in my mind because it was so bad and so entertaining. Spoiler alert, I got to say everything. I got to tell the whole story about it. And it's so egregious, right? So I had seen the preview. I'd seen the trailer. And in the trailer, it's a white guy and his daughter, and I'll show you, some images from the movie. Just the thing I do here while I'm talking here. And the actor. He's just like one of those Midwestern kind of nice guy, nice white guy kind of. You know who he is. Like you've seen him. I don't know his name offhand. I could look it up, but who cares? And his daughter and him are going to a Taylor Swift like concert. And his daughter's really excited. She's like 13, that age where they're just, like the worst day. And she's had some issues with her friends kind of thing. And this is a big deal. Her and her dad are going to this concert. And the movie, in the trailer, they show you that the guy finds out that there's all these like SWAT level police, all kinds of different law enforcement people, like thousands of them, surrounding the concert hall and in the concert hall, and they're trying to catch a serial killer because they've been tipped off that the serial killer's one of the 3,000 adult white males in this concert area, and they're going to flush this guy out because they know he's in there. And he's the guy. And so he's the guy because he, for whatever reason, he has a guy who's chained up in a basement, in his house or somewhere. They don't tell you initially. But he has this guy chained in his basement, and he's looking at it. This guy's, he's obviously going to kill. And you find out the guy's name is the Butcher because he slices and dices up his victims. M. Night Shyamalan always has, like, these goofy names. And so I look forward to seeing the movie because I knew it was going to be really bad. M. Night Shyamalan has made, the Sixth Sense, and I'd have to go back and rewatch these movies, and I'm not going to. And I liked some of them. But, he would contrive these storylines, and he would take huge liberties with reality to make his surprise endings and his points and his, the pace of his movies makes sense, right? Because his movies were often very slowly paced. And so I knew this movie was going to be bad because that's a horrible premise. Because when you are doing something like a law enforcement, like a manhunt or something like this, right, this would be, and you got a tip that the guy was at a concert with like 60,000 people, most of them young girls, and that you would roll out, military level, SWAT level personnel in an environment like that, you're going to have casualties, right? If this guy's some epic serial killer and somehow you got this data and it's only enough data that he's in there, but somehow that you can get the guy because, when you find out what the data was, it's almost nothing, right? And they figure out the guy's going to be in there. They're sure he's in there. And yet, they don't have enough data to, they don't know anything about the guy in terms of who he really is, right? And so it's a silly premise because you just wouldn't do that. You can't justify that level of law enforcement expenditure for the lack of evidence they have in a situation where there'll be casualties. Because in the movies, cops take shots, they discharge their weapons in ways that there'll always be civilian casualties, right? You remember it was a big thing in the Marvel Avengers movies because the Avengers would get into these fights with the supervillains and there was always going to be casualties because they were in the middle of New York City, right? And, and it was they were held before the UN or Congress or whatever it was, being criticized for the amount of, sheeple being lost, right? All these NPCs that are in movies. But these car chases and things that they do in movies are not realistic because you can't justify taking somebody down in this manner and then killing lots of other people, right? I mean, think about all the NPCs, all the extras that have died in action movies. It's just ridiculous. Like the heroes end up killing more people in one scene than a serial killer kills in their whole life. And so this guy's killed 15 people, and yet the chance of many more people being killed in some kind of a takedown situation in a crowded concert hall is just silly. It's stupid. Like it's just a bad idea, and there's nowhere to go with it. So I start watching the movie, and it becomes clear to me that his daughter, which I end up searching on my phone while watching it, M Night Shyamalan's daughter is the Taylor Swift-like character, and she has a whole album that's associated with the movie. Like she has songs that are now released, and she has a singing career as well as an actress. She plays an actress. I mean, she acts in the movie. She has a significant role in the movie. Aside from performing in the concert, she later plays a role where she interacts with the killer. And so I'm like, the nepotism, like you just, again, he's taking liberties. Lots of people put themselves, M. Night Shyamalan always inserts himself in his movies to some extent, right? They did this with Stan Lee in the Marvel movies, and there's other directors and writers who insert themselves into the movies, which is very, egotistical and, self-serving. And people take care of their relatives. They'll cast their relatives. But he made a whole movie where his daughter gets to be a rock star and then actually releases an actual album, a pop star, and releases an actual album, and then gets a major role in the movie, in a movie that's so contrived to make this thing work, right? To make her, have a part in a movie where she's a pop star and gets to sing, but also have it be some murderous thriller type of thing that M. Night Shyamalan kind of specializes in, is egregious. Like, it is just so fucked up. And it's embarrassingly bad because his daughter isn't very good at acting. I don't know if the singing is whatever that is. I don't know how manipulated that is. But she certainly isn't that good at acting and wouldn't be cast otherwise, right? Like, I don't think she'll be in a lot of movies that aren't his. I don't think she's going to have a career outside of her dad's movies, right? And he plays a role in that with his daughter, and we'll come back to that because it gets, as we go through the narration of the story. And so the dad comes in with the daughter, and she's dancing, the songs are going, and it seems, because of the trailer, what's going to happen. Otherwise, you would be like, what is this movie? Why are they at this concert, right? Like, something's got to happen other than dad and his daughter watching a pop star, because that wouldn't be interesting at all, right? And so the cops are present. He notices the police, and he goes to the bathroom, and he shows you that he's got a guy chained in the basement that he's watching on his phone. Like, he likes to check up on his victims on his phone every once in a while. And that's, like, there's huge plot holes and story holes with that. And so then he's got to figure out what's going on with all these cops, right? And so him and his daughter come out during an intermission, and his daughter says she wants a shirt, and the girl next to her, who's been standing there a while, but somehow none of these vendors noticed her, right? These guys who are selling the merch. And there's an overweight African-American guy who's supposed to be the comic relief, and it's important the way he picks these demographics. Some of it's the narrative, right? The woke narrative that is intertwined with the overall plot holes and disaster this movie is. And so the girl next to her says, "Oh, I also want that shirt." And the dad says to his daughter, "Okay, we'll let her have it, and we'll see if we can find it on, later or whatever." Another one. And the guy who's selling the merch goes, "Oh my God, you guys are good people." because the dad relented on this shirt where the other girl was rightfully entitled to it because she had been standing there longer, right? She wanted the exact same shirt. And so the dad pulls the guy over to the side. So this is a time of the concert. You know, there's intermissions where people go and get food and or merch. And I guess at these concerts they have this merch out there, so it would be like a, you know, mob of 60,000 people coming out and getting, you know, buying all this merch up, right? And so the guy, the murderer and the vendor, the guy selling the merch salesman, have a little sidebar in the middle of this epic rush where stuff is flying off the shelves because this guy is good people. And the vendor, the merch guy, divulges all the secrets that are going on with the cops, right? Because this guy was so generously allowed the girl who was standing there longer to have the shirt that she rightfully deserved. Because of this, the guy says, the vendor goes, well, you're good people. I'll tell you everything I know, right? And they have two interactions. So the first interaction, he tells them that there's a serial killer out there. You know, you're the butcher. And the butcher, they're trying to get the butcher. They know he's in here. And they're going to get him. And so he tells them quite a bit of information. And they have this uncomfortable close-ups where the camera, I mean, if you're watching this on the big screen, almost, you know, the whole close-up is, you know, their face would be this giant face, right? Even on a TV, it's huge. And it's just like, you know, people who make filmmakers who make films and just do different shit. And this is something M. Night Shyamalan does quite a bit. These uncomfortable close-ups to this bizarre conversation. And the guy eventually goes, oh, I got to get back to work. Of course you do. It's a fucking rush, and you shouldn't have been over there in the first place telling the guy shit that you weren't supposed to tell him, right? He goes, don't tell anybody. He goes, no, I won't, you know. And he tells them all about what's going on. And so now this guy knows he's being hunted. You know he's the guy because you've already seen the video that he watched when he went to the bathroom. He went to the bathroom, went to the stall, and sees this Asian guy he has captured in his basement, right? That's chained in his basement. And so then he's going back to his daughter, and now he knows that there's a trap set up for him. And he's looking for a way out, right? And aside from the giant plot holes, the acting is horrible, the directing and all of it, the way that he's framing the narrative is just a bad fucking movie. And so then the stage opens up to this, and the guy tells him that the complete place is you know, there's no access, but the only way that the guy could possibly get out is through getting on the backstage, right? Going backstage. If he can get backstage, he can probably escape. And so they've set up this, you know, this trap, and they've allowed low-level employees who have no military or police training information that they could divulge to this mastermind criminal who, you know, they attribute like superpowers to as we go through the story. And he gets information from this guy. And so then he goes back to get the shirt. And the guy goes, oh, yeah, you're the guy with the shirt, right? And he goes, yeah. And the guy tells him he's a fireman, so now he's got even more good guy street cred. And he goes, well, I have to go in the back and get the box. And he goes, well, I'll go with you. And the guy goes, sure, let's come with me. So he takes his ID and he opens this door that leads to where all the merch is. And he goes, and the fireman is, you know, taller than the guy, and he grabs the box, and the guy's like, wow, you're strong. It's like this freaking bad. And he tells him like all the rest of the stuff that he knows, right? He tells him he's a fan of the butcher, and, you know, the vendor guy, the merch guy says he's a fan of the butcher. And he goes, you know, they gave us a secret word. The other guy's like, oh, well, if you don't mind, you want to tell me? He goes, sure, I'll tell you. It's Hamilton. And he snatches the guy's ID when the guy isn't looking. So he now has the employee's ID, so he can get back to these other areas that are just, you know, teeming with cops, most of them, you know, because they're all over the place. I mean, there's thousands of cops in there. And, you know, based in the way that they're showing it. And then there's cops outside and, you know, SWAT teams and all these things, right? Full gear. And then he sees that there's a profiler. There's an old lady walking around who's giving orders. Well, so he takes the guy's ID. He leaves his daughter again. His daughter's like, "Why do you keep on leaving?" Plus, he says to his daughter, some guy, some pop star, emerges from the stage right next to them, like where the stairs are. The stairs lift out, and the guy comes, out from underneath the stairs, and then walks down to sing a duet with M Night Shyamalan's daughter. and then, and then he tries to get his daughter to go into the stage. He's like, "Let's go in there." His daughter's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He's like, "No, let's go in there. Like, it'll be cool." And so then he's like, "Oh, no, that's stupid." So then he goes back out again. And he gets access to this door, and he goes in, and there's a SWAT team in there, and this one guy's giving the SWAT team a pep talk. And he walks through all the SWAT members, and he pretends that he's a guy, because he's got his ID now, that he's a worker, but he looks like a dad who's there with his daughter, like a 40-year-old dad with his daughter at a concert. But he walks through the SWAT guys. None of them see that, the killer's amongst them. And he changes the coffee, and he gives some guy the sugar. Some guy's like, "Do you have any sugar?" And he's like, "Oh, no, here, you can have my private stash." And he looks in the cabinet underneath, and he finds some. Like, the guy couldn't do that himself. And then he goes, "You guys want donuts?" "I'll leave him out here." And then on the way out, he snatches a walkie-talkie. So he goes back with his daughter. He's listening in for the walkie-talkie. He gets some more information from the cops because everyone's just willing to talk to these guys, right? And he goes out there, and he's listening to the walkie-talkie stuff while he's in the concert, right? And it's this woman, this psychologist, this serial killer profiler, and she's saying all this information. And so then he goes back out, and he's going to pull the fire alarm, but he's listening to the walkie-talkie, and she goes, "This guy's going to pull a fire alarm." So he just when he's about to do it, and he's like, "Oh, I better not do that. She's got me figured out." So he doesn't pull the fire alarm, but then he decides he wants to go see where this other door leads because there's two guards in front of the door, right? There's two cops standing in front of the door, and so he and they're posted there in front of the door, and there's lots of other cops. And so he sees that there's a deep fryer, and he throws a couple of jars of fat in there, and he turns it up to 400 degrees. And the girl who's working the fry machine the thing's starting to bubble, and you can hear the glass start to about to explode. And she just stares at it, and it blows up in her face, and she gets burned. And the cops run over there, leaving the door unmanned. And so he goes up there, even though it's loaded with cops, and he takes an apron, right? He takes some guy's apron it's just next to there. So now he's wearing an apron. He goes up to the roof, and two SWAT members, fully, suited up, armored, body armored SWAT members come up to him, a male and a female, and the guy starts talking to him. Said, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Oh my God, there was a tragedy down there. My coworker got blasted by oil, and she's all burned, and I just need a break, so I came up here," right? He does in a very unconvincing way. And the woman's like, "Oh, yeah, what's the password?" And he goes, "Hamilton." Because they've given all these people password. And he was able to extract it from this guy who's this jovial merch vendor who couldn't wait to divulge all the secrets. And so now he knows the password. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, okay, you know the password, bud. But what about the secret card? Would you got the secret card?" And he starts searching his pockets. And then he goes into the apron pockets. This apron was just hanging up where everyone had access to it. Like where it wouldn't have been. Like it's just an apron. There's like 3 or 4 aprons hanging on a coat hanger next to this place where you get French fries and fast food. And he just grabs it, right? And he reaches into the front pocket of the apron and pulls out some guy's wallet. Some guy left his wallet with money and credit cards and all these things in this apron right in front of right in front of this fast food place, which is just unbelievable. And he looks at the thing and he pulls out a card, right? And it shows the ID, and it's the guy's, Hispanic or Asian or something, doesn't look anything like him. But they don't, see it because the card he has just has this special card all the employees got. So they had a password and a card they had to carry around, and the key card he snatched, right? And so it's just like all this lucky stuff is happening for the guy, right? Like he just happened to hear her say that he's likely to pull a fire alarm, and so she's like, she's gonna create a distraction. He's gonna pull a fire alarm, like his hands going up to the fire alarm. It's just the timing's impeccable. So then he goes back to his daughter, and they're starting to close in, and they're starting to pull guys out of the theater itself. Cops are going through the audience and grabbing guys, white guys, white dads, and it's a whole thing. And he can hear, they're closing in, and this woman's profiling him. And so his daughter says to him, like he's listening to his earphone, and she grabs him and says, Dad, Dad. And she's like, you're acting so weird, like he's leaving all the time. And so the daughter says, boy, there's a dance coming up that's like she hasn't told her dad this whole thing, whatever he told her, they're going to the concert together. This 13-year-old girl who can't stop talking about herself, right? Like 13-year-old girls do. And she now divulges to him that Lady Raven, M. Night Shyamalan's daughter who's singing, pulls the girl up on stage every concert and dances with her, right? She goes, boy, it'd be great if I was that girl. And the guy's like, yeah, we could get backstage. And, I was told earlier by the vendor, if you get backstage, then there's clear ceilings and we can get out of here. Because, they tell everybody all the holes in their security system. And so he then turns around, he walks 3 stairs, and there's M. Night Shyamalan just happens to be standing there. And he goes, wow, this is great. You work with her? She goes, yeah, oh, she's amazing. He's talking about the singer. And M. Night Shyamalan goes, yeah, it's my niece. I'm her uncle. And he goes, yeah, I'm in charge of this thing. So he's like managing this thing. He just happens to be standing on the stairs in the crowd 4 steps away from the guy, conveniently. And the guy says, the butcher says, well, my daughter has been so much to her. She has leukemia. She just got better. Of course, she has all her hair, and she looks completely healthy. She doesn't like to talk about it, but she has it. She just got over it. And this, your niece has been so pivotal. It's just been wonderful. So if you get a chance to tell her that, thank her for, helping my daughter out and these things, right? And the guy said, what seat are you sitting in? Even though it's like 3 seats down from where he's standing. And of course, now M. Night Shyamalan comes back and says, guess what? You're going backstage because you just got over leukemia. And you make a wish story that was suddenly created in the middle of this bad movie. And they bring him up to the backstage, right? And so as they walk down, they're probably 10 or 15 rows up. They're on the floor in these temporary seating at, this arena that would be on the basketball court, right? And then they go up, and the cops don't want to let the dad through. And it's like, no, he's with me. And M. Night Shyamalan whispers into the cop's ear. You don't hear it. But, he's telling him about this leukemia story. And so the cop relents. It's a wall of cops. Like it's 100 cops that are just standing there in front of the stage. And these kids are all dancing and singing and playing along, and their parents, and nobody's noticing the overwhelming police presence, right? And people are getting snatched out of the audience, and guys are being, arrested. One guy was a petty thief that he finds out about when he turns on his walkie-talkie, which then just disappears. They don't show him getting rid of it, but now he doesn't have it as they go backstage. So his daughter is going to go up there and dance with M. Night Shyamalan's daughter as she sings, and her daughter gets up and is dancing and singing. And while that's happening, or like when she gets done, there's a girl that's staggering there. He's already pushed one girl down the stairs who was drunk to cause a distraction. And then he sees that this girl is drunk, and he brings her backstage. He picks her up because the profiler is coming through, the old lady. And he has asked somebody about her at some point. I'm not sure when it was in the movie, but he tells her about this award-winning profiler who just knows everything. And she keeps on saying, because she's the person in charge of everybody has a walkie-talkie, can hear her talking. and she's telling everybody, "We got him. We got this thing all locked down, right?" And so we got him, and she's telling him what he's going to do and how she's, she knows all these things. And so later he finds out that half of his purchase ticket, like half of it, like, whatever the information was on the ticket, they only have half a ticket that indicated that this must be a serial killer. Like his receipt for buying his concert tickets indicated that this guy was going to the concert, and they're sure that he's there because half of this receipt, right, which becomes even goofier later on towards the end of the movie. It's that, that storyline gets developed later on. And so he picks this girl up who's drunk and carries her where all these kids who are suffering, all the people that, pass out at these political events that I show you, where the person on stage, whether it's Trump or Obama or Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris or Walls or any of these people, they pretend that somebody passes out, and then they administer medical advice from their podium. It must be all these people. So there's all these young people who are drunk or passed out, laying in cots, like right off the stage, right? They're all backstage. They're dragged, that's where they take these kids, the privileged backstage where they have access to the performers. And he puts an ice pack on the girl's head, and there's a young woman who's in charge. She's the one who M. Night Shyamalan assigned to take care of this dad and daughter while they are backstage. And she comes back and says, "Oh, you're helping out back here," because he's a fireman. And there's a nurse that goes, "Can we keep him? He's wonderful." Because he carried this girl back there and slapped an ice pack on her head, right? And so now everyone's like, "Oh my God, this guy's great," because he gave up a T-shirt and he helped a girl who's drunk and passed out. And so now they're behind in the bowels of the stadium kind of area, right? And the girl says, he goes, "Can we get an exit from here?" Because there's one last song. She's doing encore with some performer. And she goes, "Just listen to this last song, and then you can exit right out the back here, and you can just, there's an exit there." And so he avoided the profiler, but then he's backstage, and the person that sung with M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, the last song, is a very diva-like gay black dude who has like the kind of blonde hair that those dragon people had in Game of Thrones, right? Like that kind of blonde, platinum bleached white hair. And he's the reason I'm saying that is because he ends up walking by the killer and his daughter after bitching out his assistant, and then he looks at the guy and he starts flirting and blowing kisses and wiggling his ass, and like he's trying to pick up the butcher on his way out of the stadium. And so the butcher walks by, it goes towards the exit. And now the woman said, "Oh, let's block out the backstage because this guy will probably try to get backstage." Like all of a sudden she changes their whole strategy, and now they are policing the backstage, and he's going to have to go through these cops. So now he can't get access out to backstage. So M. Night Shyamalan's singer daughter comes by and recognizes the girl that she pulled up on stage and danced with and starts talking to her. And the dad goes, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And M. Night Shyamalan's daughter's like, "Sure, I'm not just a big star, but, I'll talk to you." And they go in the back room, and the dad says, "You know how long someone can live without oxygen in a closed space?" And she goes, "How long?" He goes, 5 minutes. I'm a fireman, I know. And he busts out his phone and shows the guy who's trapped and says, I'm the guy you're looking for. And if you don't take me and my daughter out of here in your limousine, which, then he's a known entity, right? Like unless he kills this girl and her driver and all these things, he's gonna, his plan is to be dropped off anywhere in the middle of the street so he can get into his car and get out of there, right? But she's gonna, she can ID the guy, right? And they can probably figure out who it was based on the credit card information and things from his ticket and where he was sitting. So he's caught, right? By doing this, he's only prolonging himself getting caught. And he says, "I'm going to kill this guy right now. I have a button to push, and there's this bomb here, and it's going to suck all the oxygen out of the room and release release carbon dioxide, and he'll be dead in 5 minutes if you don't let me go in your limousine. So she gets him through all security, and they leave in her limousine. But she's not the ordinary pop singer who just wants to, keep herself safe. She's a daredevil, and she's willing to risk her own life to save this dude locked up in this guy's basement. And then she says to the girl, "Can I come over your house?" And the guy's like showing the phone and like flashing his phone like, "I'm gonna kill this guy." And she's like, "Let's go to your house. I'll meet your family. You're just great and wonderful." And the girl gets all excited, and the dad can't say anything because he doesn't want his daughter to know he's the butcher. And so M. Night Shyamalan's daughter goes with them to their house, and they're all excited, and he gets alone with her and says, "I don't know what you're trying to do here." And then she starts telling the story of what was going on at the concert, and she has extensive training and knowledge about this butcher from this woman, the profiler. She said, like they don't even know what kind of car he drives because he has issues with his mother, because at one point he had seen his mother when he was in the bathroom. His mother's been dead, but he sees her washing her hands or in front of the sink. He sees her a few times. So he's got mama issues, which is, the original Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock, and then Dressed to Kill, later movie that was made, similar plot line. These guys, Norman Bates, they have mama issues, mother issues, and they turn into serial killers, right? So M. Night Shyamalan's daughter's telling them all this, and he interrupts her and is trying to get her to stop talking about the serial killer. But she says they even know what color car he was. He was going to drive a dark car because they have him psychologically profiled. And his minivan is back at the frickin' stadium because he took the limo, and so he just left his car there, and they're going to his house. And so he's trying to hurry M. Night Shyamalan's daughter out, and she says, "Oh, let me sing a song," and there's a piano there. So she starts playing the piano and sings a song for the family before she goes. And she has a girl sit next to her, and the girl's singing with her. And she snatches the girl's cell phone while she's playing the piano and singing. And then she goes, and the dad's sitting there with his phone out because he's trying to threaten her with the phone that he's going to kill the guy if she doesn't get out of there, right? And so, it's really bad. And then she says, "Let's get a selfie." And the girl goes, "Well, I don't have my phone," because M. Night Shyamalan's daughter has it in her pocket. And so she grabs the dad's phone. This M. Night Shyamalan's daughter grabs the dad's phone, and she's a really bad actress, and says, let's use your dad's phone." And she takes his phone, and he goes, "Can I have my phone back, please?" And she goes, "Where's the bathroom?" And she takes his phone and runs into the bathroom, and he loses it and starts banging on the door. And the family's getting all upset. "And Dad, why are you acting so weird?" And he bangs on the door. So she's in the bathroom, and she's got 3 phones. She takes her phone out, and she posts on Instagram. Well, first of all, she goes to his phone, and she talks to the guy chained up in his basement, right? And the guy, somehow he has a way to communicate so he can taunt the guy. So there's a speaker there. And so she starts talking to this guy who's going to be the serial killer's victim, and she asked him for any information that would lead to discovery of where he's at, because he's in some random basement of some building. And he gives her all the information, and then she goes to Instagram and then says, "This is not a joke. Does anybody recognize these landmarks?" And one of her Instagram followers does. And she goes, "Well, go get your family and go to the basement of this house. There's a guy in there who's chained up, and let him out." And she does. Because the dad is yelling and arguing with his family. And then she says to her limo driver, "Call the police." But she doesn't say, "Call the police because I'm here with the serial killer," because that would be the smart thing to do. And then the dad slowly gets the key to the bathroom and opens the door. He's very upset, but he's very calm, like the way his demeanor is. He's like, "Can I have my phone back, please?" And he checks it, and the guy's not there. And he goes, "How did you do that?" She used the power of Instagram and her teenage followers, and they freed the victim in the basement, right? And he goes, "Can I have all the phones, my daughter's phone, which I presume you have, and also your phone?" And he grabs her, and he puts his finger on her shoulder and goes, "Do not break contact with me." And so then they go into the garage, and the cops are coming, and he decides to tell her, you know what, your profiler was right. And it's a white, like, compact car that they're getting into about the color of my car, but this is my wife's car. Right? So, like, and then she starts saying to him, like, she starts talking to him like she's his mother. Because this pop singer, she who has managers and handlers, and somehow she agreed to be a part of this trap where there was, the chances of a cop shooting a civilian and more likely a teenage girl would be highly likely with a serial killer afoot in this audience in theater. But somehow her production company and her managers and her uncle M Night Shyamalan and all these people signed off on this idea. And then she talked to this profiler woman, and she was seen talking to her. And this killer was, when they were backstage, and the killer was listening in because they're like good friends. And she has all this information. And also, she was trained to, if you came across this guy, to talk to him like you're his mother and talk about being a good boy in these things and pretend to be his mom because, he's psychologically fragile and it might just get under his skin or something, right? And so she's talking to her like she's his mom. He's like, that's not going to work on me. And he opens up the garage door and his family is standing in front of the car. His wife, the teenage daughter, and their 6 or 7-year-old son are standing in front of the car. And he goes, I've done such a good job of keeping my life separate. I didn't realize there was a tree outside my daughter's window when I locked her in the room. And they climbed down the tree. And now they're standing in front of the car. M. Night Shyamalan's daughter gets out. And he closes the garage door. And he says to his wife to take care of the kids. And he says, do this for this kid, do that for that kid. And he closes the garage door. And he makes his way to escape. And then all of these cops are pulling up right at that moment. And there's a SWAT truck and the profiler, even though she told the guy just to call the police, they roll everything. And there's like 12 cop cars and a SWAT team, tactical SWAT team. And, all these other people show up in the profiler. And they break down the door and they go into the house. And the guy has like a secret compartment under the under the pantry. And somehow, while being a fireman, which is his job, and raising these kids, he's managed to dig a tunnel into his neighbor's backyard. And in this tunnel, so then and then they show M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, and she's in the car. She's in the limousine. And somebody comes up to the driver and says, I'll drive her. And it's a SWAT guy, and he gets into the car, which of course, it's the butcher. Like, it's just obviously the butcher, because why else would this happen? And she's in a daze, and she doesn't notice. And so he got, not only did he have a secret tunnel, but somehow he has a full, body armor and cop gear that he puts on and a cop helmet. And he walks outside, and he gets into the car with this woman, even though he's surrounded by these cops, because this tunnel goes into his neighbor's yard. And the neighbor never noticed this escape tunnel going into their yard in this suburban neighborhood. And he gets out. And he's driving the girl, right? And then he stops, like they get a little bit away from the scene of the crime, his house. He gets out and he handcuffs her to a pole, like a bar that's on the door of the limousine. And she's now handcuffed, and he's going to take her somewhere to kill her. And then he's going to kill himself, which he had divulged to her in the car earlier. So somehow he's obsessed with killing the pop star. And he says that, he saw her singing, and he just got this urge to kill her anyway. And so M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, who's, the hero of this show so far, and also she's a singer, a pop singer. And apparently she's sung other songs for, like, he had an Apple series. And so she has her own YouTube page, and she doesn't get very many views, like the number one got like 500,000. And you think just in terms of the Indian population in America and being, the son of, or the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan, she'd get more love, but she doesn't. And so she's in the back, and she somehow manages to get the window down at the exact moment that the guy stops the car at a place where there just happened to be a bunch of young people, like a crowd of young people, who are just like right there outside the car. And she opens up the window after reaching forever. And she gets the window down, and they go, it's Lady Raven, or what the fuck they're calling her. And she and then he puts the window up, and now the crowd's like, hey. And she's like, help me, help me. And so the crowd storms around the car, so he can't, even though he's a serial killer, he refuses to drive through them, right? And she and the cops show up almost immediately. Like someone calls the cops and they're there, and she manages to pull the bar off of the door and slide her handcuffs off, even though she weighs she looks like she's anorexic. She weighs like frickin' 90 pounds. She has the strength to rip the bar off of the door like some kind of Hulk and get her handcuffs through the, outside off of the car, and she opens the car and gets out. And the cops surround this car, and they just start shooting into the car, even though there's a crowd of people there. And he looked at some merch. There's a pile of merch on the passenger seat in the limo. And so they shoot at it, and you can see the helmet and the uniform, but he's not in it, of course. And they shoot into the car, and they open the door, and he's not there. And then they show M. Night Shyamalan's daughter there in the crowd, and a very angry butcher serial killer who's wearing a hoodie, a Lady Raven hoodie that, even though he's 6'2" or 6'3", he's a big guy, it somehow fits him. And he walks away in his hoodie. And M. Night Shyamalan's daughter goes to the place where the victim was released, and she finds the girl who responded to her on Instagram and went over and saved the guy, and she gives them both a hug. And then her storyline is more or less over, even though, she got the hero narrative. And so, and they go to the house of the butcher's house, and the wife is talking to the profiler. And the wife says, is there any lectures that I can go to where you'll talk about profiling serial killers? And the woman says, yeah, you can do that. And, I'm leaving you here, but you and your family are safe. There are a couple of cop cars outside that will protect you from, the guy returning, even though he's that large and he's shown an incredible job at being an escape artist, right? And so then, that happened earlier, and then he's escaped from the limo thing, and the wife is cooking something on the stove. It's late at night, she's just cooking something. And she realizes there's someone in the room with her, and she turns around, it's her serial killer husband. And he's sitting there going, they did this trap, and they had this, receipt, and they figured out I was going to be there, but I think the trap started earlier and more, in my personal life here at home. And she's like, whatever do you mean? And then she says to him, she had made a special pie for her daughter to go to the concert. So she has a special pie, and she goes, let's eat a slice of pie. And the guy has a butcher knife, so he's going to kill his wife and cut her up. He said this is going to end in the traditional murder-suicide type situation where he's going to kill her and apparently the kids, I don't know, and himself. And, she's talking about the monster within. Like, I just have this monster within and, this thing. Like, that's part of the theme. And he goes, all right, I'll eat the pie, but it's not going to delay with anything. And so she starts telling him the story. He goes, I was out late at night and you started to get suspicious and you thought I was cheating, but then you realized that didn't make sense. And she goes, yeah, it didn't. And he goes, what was it? And she goes, it was just a smell. You'd come home late night smelling like hospital cleaner. And he's like, oh, man. And she goes, because of the hospital cleaner, I started to get suspicious. So I followed you. And this guy, because he was a fireman, there were all these buildings that had been, that were unoccupied because they were considered fire hazards. So these buildings that all the firemen would have connection to, people's private property, he had these safe houses all over the city where he would do his butchering, where he would butcher these people, right? And there's a scene in there where the guy was talking about, the victim talked about how the guy asked him to jump his car. He just seemed like such a nice, average, they don't say it, but white guy a good guy, and deep down he's a serial killer. It almost felt like certainly a reference to this whole kind of demonization of white guys, cisgender white guys, but also the demonization of Trump. It almost felt like a little bit like that, like a little bit woke, a little subtle kind of jab. I mean, the rest of this movie's so not subtle, but it has a little bit of that in there, right? And he's eating the pie, and she goes, "So I followed you to this location, and you left, and I broke in, and he goes, well, I didn't leave anything but a table." She goes, "No, but I got in there, and I got a sense, and I worried, and so I left half of your receipt there to the concert." And so she's saying that and then she called the cops and left an anonymous call of the house saying that she thought the butcher was there. So she suspects her husband of being the butcher. And so instead of going out to the cops and saying, "I'm concerned my husband might be the butcher," and, protecting her family and having them arrest the guy and, do whatever they do or question him or do whatever they do and observe him and do it in a way where they're not, in the situation she created instead, where she sends her daughter to a concert knowing that the cops are going to try to do some manhead dragnet thing, and her daughter's going to be put in harm's way as the cops try to arrest her husband and, flesh him out in the sea of all these people. And she puts her daughter at total risk. Like, it's the stupidest shit. Like, as stupid as the plot line was, it just got so much stupider that her mom would knowingly send her daughter into a concert with her husband who she suspects of being a serial killer named the Butcher, to a venue where there was going to be all these police with machine guns armed to the tilt who were going to be going through this, these people at the thing looking for a husband and arresting him in front of her daughter. Like, if it went smoothly and they took him down, her daughter would be left at the concert with her serial killer dad being arrested and be traumatized for the rest of her life, right? Especially when all the kids that were already making fun of her for some reason that something happened, if she had a falling out with her friends, it's about to get really bad, right? Instead of doing it discreetly and safely and going to the cops or even anonymously dropping the tip so that they find the guy, somewhere outside of a concert venue, right? And so at that point, the guy's eating the pie, and you know that something's in the pie because of the way he's eating it. You're like, she drugged the pie. Like, you just know it. Like, it's just fucking, it's the next logical thing. And he looks down, and he sees there's this white powder in the crust, and he starts moving it back and forth with his fork. And he goes, "You found my go bag, right?" So then they go to a shot of his go bag, and inside it is a bunch of drugs. And she had put the drugs in the pie or added it to him when he wasn't looking or whatever it was. And now he's taken all this. He goes, "It's just the stuff I give to my victims to make them more cooperative and sleepy." And so then he gets up with a butcher knife, but he's staggering because he's so tired. He starts chasing his wife around the living room. And all of a sudden, his mom appears at the front door. And she says, "You're really a good boy. Come to me. You've got good side too, and you're a good boy." All these things. It's obviously the profiler. And this is the big sort of, they have a number of these sort of like M Night Shyamalan surprise ending things, but none of them are surprises. Because you knew it was coming because they had set it up. And she's talking to him like he's his mom. He's like, "Mom, is that you?" So he walks to his mom staggering, right? Because he's on sedatives. And there's two cops on either side of him as he goes towards the front door. And they both, they have those tasers that the taser that goes into you, those cop tasers where there's a wire from the taser into the gun, and they're high voltage, and they put two of them in him, and they're shocking the shit out of him, and he still manages to get to one of the cops, and he starts to gouge his eyes out with his thumbs, and then the profiler who was pretending to be his mom comes into the room and tases him again, and so he's getting tased twice, and he finally gets knocked out, right? And so the woman goes to the mother, "Oh, we're going to return your kids to you soon." And so they got him in multiple chains, these multiple, like not just regular handcuffs, but like multiple chains, like some kind of, a Silence of the Lamb kind of stuff. and they got him cuffed up to the max, right? And chains running over his shoulders and shit like that. And they have the SWAT teams back there. They show up with all these cops, multiple police vehicles, and they're walking him out of the house. This guy's killed and butchered like 11 people, and he's cost the city millions of dollars in this operation. I mean, the labor itself would be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And so he's walking out to the car, and they made a point to say he has OCD, like Shyamalan's daughter was saying, part of the profile, because he's trying to get to the family to realize their dad's a serial killer, and but the mom knew this whole time, right? So all the shit that's happened, her mom was aware and had suspected he was a serial killer, and now all these things had happened, and her and the profiler decided to set up this trap inside the house for him, and she was going to poison her husband and get him to eat pie before he killed her, because that was part of the plan. And they waited that whole time knowing he was inside the house so he and the wife could have this conversation. With the wife divulged that she was the one who ratted him out and left half a receipt at a building and called it in saying, I think this is where the butcher is. And they went in there and found a table and a receipt to a concert. And that was enough to get some bureaucrat to sign off on a multi-million-dollar sting operation that would involve, the militarized police at a concert venue with 60,000 innocent people that were likely going to be caught in the crossfire, while they, flushed out this butcher that this profiler was sure was going to be at the concert based on this overwhelming evidence of half a receipt of 2 concert tickets that were purchased. Right? So after causing all this problems, he's walking, and his daughter's bike is laying sideways. And his daughter's like a teenager. It's one of those sort of girly, little, banana seat bikes that they'd have, as a young kid, right? But he picks the bike up. It's laying in the grass right next to the sidewalk. They're frog walking him back to the transport vehicle. And he picks up the bike, right? And, the cops let him. The cops let him go pick up the bike. They don't strong arm him. And they're, this guy's this superhuman guy who's on sedatives, and he's just been tased by 3 different fucking tasers, so much so that made him knocked him out. He revives, and he still has to set this bike set the bike back up and put the kickstand on. And so then he's in the back of the truck. He's got a smile on his face. And they go back to the bike, and they see that one of the spokes in the wheel is missing. These spokes, if you ever had a spoke tightener, you can't just take it out by your hand. And it's connected. The spokes themselves are, connected by a screw to the wheel, but also to the hub. And he somehow, in front of the cops, got this spoke out, and it's in his hand. And he pulls it out, and he undoes the cuffs. And he's undoing his cuffs, and he's got this big smile on his face as he's freeing himself, and they end the movie right there, right? With this, potential for a really bad sequel to a fucking horrific movie that has more plot holes than anything I've ever seen, and it's so poorly executed. It is like an epically bad movie, right? Embarrassingly so. M Night Shyamalan's movies have been more and more egregious and taking more and more liberties with reality, and then making this a vehicle for his daughter's singing and acting career that is only going to exist if he keeps on putting her in movies where she has to sing, and so she doesn't have her own following or her own star power, right? And the whole thing was just embarrassingly bad. And then they start rolling the credits, and I'm just about to turn it off and erase it, but then they show the merch guy. And he's sitting on the couch watching the news. And they said they've caught the profiler, and his identity is the so-and-so fireman, whatever his name is. And the guy goes, oh, I helped him. I helped the guy. I helped him. He goes, I'm never going to talk to anybody at work again. And that's it. And I'm like, this is like the worst. These movies that are, the stories and the narratives and the contrived nature and all this shit that they do. And, not so much in this movie with the woke stuff and the feminist stuff, but it's there, right? The woman of power, like his wife is the one that gets him, and the woman in charge is a profiler, and his daughter is the heroes. The heroes of the movie are all women, right? Also, his kids come back after he's gotten the spoke. They don't show you that he's gotten the spoke yet. And his daughter gets out of the car and runs and gives him a big hug, right? And then she goes to be with her mom, as like she's kind of figure out her dad's a serial killer now, but she still loves him. And then, so all this stuff. But, the women of power being important figures in the movie, like they're the smart ones, and the men do a bunch of stupid shit and, help them along. But, these contrived narratives and just how bad these things are. Like there's some really great stuff that's more sophisticated. I mean, some of the best content in movies and things have been produced lately. Things that are just more sophisticated. Content has gotten better. But the content that's bad is much worse. And the level of stupidity, that people should almost like revolt against. Like he should be banned from making movies. This thing is almost, there should be a criminal attachment to how bad this thing is, right? Like it should be criminal. Anyways, it's an hour I spent here. Only spirituality will save this world. This Paramount definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.